They've done studies, 60% of the time, it works every time.
Oh, if Jeremy Hill can hold on to a fucking football.
That doesn't make sense.
You're listening to the P&E Bengals Fan Podcast.
3, 2, 1.
If they're going to get anything done, but they're definitely going to sign some kind of a veteran at some point. It just matters when, and do they think LaFell is the best thing they can get, or do they kind of wait until right after the draft when, some people will cut some veterans and they can pick them up on the cheap.
Right.
So it just depends. But it looks like they're kicking the tires on Brandon LaFell.
So since the last time we talked, also RG3 went to Cleveland.
Who did? Oh, RG3, yeah. Didn't think he would go, but I think that tells us a few things. I think that tells us how Hugh Jackson feels about the quarterbacks in the draft, that he doesn't think that there are any that are ready to walk in and start right away. Because if so, they don't make a commitment to RG3. They must have saw something good in his tryout for those 2 days, and at least something that can hold him over, until they pick up a young quarterback. And to be honest with you, I really kind of hope that RG3 goes in there and plays a little ball, just not against us, though, of course.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way about it. Definitely excited to see him.
It'd be nice to see the young man pick himself up after a rough tenure in Washington.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see it, but at the same time, at this point, it's not really about RG3. It's about how many pieces they've been missing. Cleveland's missing. A lot of people left in free agency, and a lot of talent has left. So leaving the cupboard kind of bare, which is kind of the reason. It also tells you that RG3 didn't have many people calling, because that's not an optimal situation for a quarterback who is trying to regain his step. To go to a team that basically has 3/5 of an offensive line, and there's no really certainty that they're going to be any good. So it tells you that stronger teams didn't come calling. Denver didn't come calling, and Dallas didn't come calling. They have Romo, but it's nice to play behind Romo because he's going to get hurt.
Right. Always.
Yeah, exactly. So
and he's just mediocre anyway.
Yeah. Well, Romo actually is pretty decent, but he's a pretty good quarterback. He chokes in the clutch. At least that's what his career shows.
Right.
But,
he's Andy Dalton in Dallas.
Over the years, he's gotten better and better. You can't complain about that. But RG3 is for him to go to Cleveland, that really makes you wonder what they're going to do with the second pick in the draft.
Yeah. All eyes will be watching.
They definitely have options now. You can still draft a quarterback and let him wait it out and learn for a year or two. You can just look at RG3 as your, immediate future, if you will, and just start building.
You would really just hope management-wise they'll just give, everybody a chance to grow. They blow it up every year and a half over there with all the coaching staff and everything. And obviously Hugh Jackson's there now, so it sounds like they're trying to be a little bit more stable. So as long as that happens, then, yeah, it's like you can try to prepare for the future, but everything in Cleveland is always now, and that's the problem.
Well, the good thing is, at this point, in the past, they have chosen coaches who really, after years, they've looked beaten, after a couple of years, as if they kind of knew the writing was on the wall. But that's one thing I'll say about Hugh Jackson. You're not going to get that from him. It doesn't matter if the first year and a half or 2 years doesn't go as well as they planned. He's going to come back with that fire and that energy, even that third year and that fourth year. You're never going to get Hugh Jackson to look like he's beaten. And the year that he was the head coach of the Raiders, he got a lot out of that team, even though they weren't really that great. So you have to think that, that if they are in it for the long haul, if they're going to give Hugh Jackson 3 or 4 years to really, turn it around, I think he might get something. At least he'll get him back to mediocrity. And, he'll get him out of the basement, kind of what Marvin Lewis did for us. But I don't know. We'll see. I was really surprised, but at the same time, kind of not. Just like I say, if anything, what it tells me is that Hugh Jackson doesn't have a lot of belief in the quarterbacks in this draft and their ability to come in and start right away, is what it tells me. And so it may be that they may try to trade out of the number 2 spot and just pick up a bunch of draft picks and then, and then just start rebuilding the roster from scratch, really, which is never fun. They're going to go through some learning pains, that's for sure. But
looking at it the other way, it's like RG3 has experience, even just in the NFL, and he was successful his first year, so he knows kind of what to do. And it all obviously depends, kind of like a Tim Tebow. It depends on the team that you build around him, and all the guys in the draft. Yeah, they might be great prospects, but you don't know what they're bringing to the table at this point. They haven't played in the NFL.
That's true, but I think at this point, if you're Hugh Jackson, what you're looking for is a certain type of guy. You're looking for the clubhouse leader. You're looking for the good locker room guys, because there's a lot of faith lost in Cleveland. And so you have to start looking for guys that know that they get drafted by a team that's going to suck for a year or two, but they're going to get some playing time. Unlike, if, at this point with the Bengals draft, anybody that gets drafted by the Bengals has to be like, man, shit, because that's a deep roster. And if you get drafted by the Bengals in the 6th round, for say, the chances of you making that roster really isn't that great. And so, yeah, at least if you tell a draft pick, hey, we're going to pick you, they're going to be like, hell yeah, rock and roll. You know what I mean? Yeah, we might suck, but I'm going to get a chance to play, and you know what I mean? I'm going to get a chance to at least show my talent. So even if I'm on the Browns and I suck for a couple of years, at least then teams will get to see me play, and hopefully, either I re-up with the Browns if I'm good enough, and we start to grow as a team, or at least you got some film on tape, and, some other team will pick you up after your initial rookie contract. So it all depends on how you look at it. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised with Hugh Jackson, even if he stays at the number 2 pick and doesn't trade out. And, he gets a stud OT or, somebody, because they lost a lot of linemen in free agency. So you'd think they'd have to restock that and then just maybe go after the quarterback next year once you get a better idea of what RG3 brings to the table for you. But it's a low risk, high reward. So and you got to figure Hugh Jackson has, he made Jason Campbell look good in Oakland, and that's a feat right there in itself. And he took Dalton from one level to another level, and so you have to think he's going to be good for RG3. It's just a matter of, honestly, at this point with the Browns draft is, it's just like the Bengals in the 90s. We always had high draft picks, but we just missed. We missed on a lot of picks. We missed on Kajana Carter. We missed on Dan Wilkerson, Peter Warwick. The list goes on and on. David Klingler. We missed on so many high picks. And, if there's anything you can see about the Bengals now, about their roster, is that our draft picks are working out better and better. Even some of the people that Marvin Lewis drafted early in his tenure were great players, but just, unfortunate. David Pollock, I thought was going to be just a ferocious linebacker. He looked extremely talented, until he snapped his neck. And then I think there was a cornerback that we had drafted his first year. I think his name was Dennis Weathersby. And he looked really good at first. He was going to be a solid pro until, he snapped his knee or something in a preseason game. I can't remember what it was, but he looked pretty solid right off the bat, and then we had the Odell Thurman experience, where he was really, really talented, but, addictions got to him, and which was unfortunate because Pollock and Thurman, you're looking at 2 guys who could have been just tremendous players. Then you have, Chris Henry, who was just starting to come into his own when he died, and and on that note, I think we got to maybe tip the hat and to the Baltimore Ravens for losing a player last week who died in a motorcycle accident. And, they're the Ravens and they're our enemies, but the one thing is we've been down that road, where you lose a young promising player, because we went through it with Chris Henry. The only difference is Chris Henry really played a lot for us, and then we just kind of lost him right when the flower was beginning to bloom with him. And so, you have to your heart goes out, to the Ravens for losing a player, and looks like Harbaugh handled it fast. So, you know what I mean? Good for them. Like, it's not good that they lost a player, but, good for the way that the organization handled it. Well, it looks like we're going to sign Carlos Dansby, which gives us a different look at our linebacking core, if you will. He's a veteran. He's 12, 13 years into the league now, and everybody's all excited on the Bengals, pages about us signing him, and like he's going to be the piece that takes us over the top, which I don't think so. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. He's solid.
I think we would have been a little bit more excited last year if we'd have got him, because they were looking at him last year and he ended up going to Cleveland, right? Or was it 2 years ago?
I think he was in Cleveland for 2 years, and he played well for them. I mean, it's not like he's a garbage player, but I don't think he's like, somebody we should be like, oh, shit, he's going to turn around the whole franchise. I don't see that. Like most veteran players that we pick up later in their career, Marvin Lewis will play him in spots. He'll play him where he needs them. The only way he'll get a lot of playing time, I think, is if, A, he comes in and he really blows it up, or B, we get some injuries on that front, and then, he plays a little bit more. But I could see him playing, a similar A.J. Hawk role from last year, just some guy, who plays in our nickel package, and where A.J. Hawk was more into the base package against the run. And, yeah, he's more of a piece. He's not the world beater, if you will, or he's not going to make all the difference in the world, but he's solid enough so that we don't really have to reach for linebackers in the draft. And that once again tells me that I don't think the Bengals are very enamored with the linebacking core in the draft, and they want to kind of concentrate on other positions, because we got, a decent amount of linebackers. I wouldn't be surprised if we pick one up in the 5th or 6th round, or, something like that. But, anytime you see a team like the Bengals try to shore up a position in free agency, it kind of gives you a hint as to what they think about the draft, to be honest with you. Same thing for huge, like a lot of those small moves that teams are making right now, it just kind of tells you what they think about the draft coming up, and places where they think they can sacrifice and look at other spots, if you will.
Yeah, and it's 30 days out still.
Yeah, all right, but those 30 days will go fast. The one interesting signing that we're going to end up making, which I think is really interesting, is Taylor Mays. I did not see that coming.
I'm surprised that you're surprised. I could always see him coming back if he didn't pick up anywhere else. Just like we talked about before, the Bengals are super loyal to, past, present, anybody who's been with the organization.
I thought Taylor Mays had his run here.
Yeah, but they like his versatility. He could play safety, he could play nickel.
Yeah, but he's a name, but that's it. That's the thing about Taylor Mays.
Yeah, but he's not anything special.
I mean, he's got all the
body.
Pro. He just could never put it together in the pros, and whether that's a mental issue or whatever, but he just never really made a huge impact at all. And I was just, obviously they're just bringing him back in for depth, but still, I was just surprised they would sign him. I just don't really know how much he brings to the table. And now I think he's under a suspension, so we're going to not have him at the beginning of the year either way.
Yeah, it makes it even worse, right?
Right. So like I said, it was a curious move by the Bengals. It'll be almost like bringing back Andre Caldwell. Like, yeah, he used to play with us, but he didn't make a really great impact when he played with us, and and just like Taylor Mays, he didn't make a big impact where he went after he left us.
Now he's got a Super Bowl ring. He was in Denver.
Yeah, but the thing is this: if you can't succeed against Manning, you really got to look at yourself in the mirror and question what kind of a receiver you are. Like, and I would be really disappointed, especially a couple years ago where Peyton Manning was just bombing it. He wasn't getting any of the catches. I mean, he got a couple, but
Yeah, it was like, what, 4th or, whatever.
I don't know. I mean, he might have got some catches, but he didn't do enough to really say to himself that I'm a top-line receiver.
Right.
I mean, Peyton Manning throws it to anyone who's open. And if you can't get into a good rapport with Peyton Manning, then what the hell are you going to do with any other quarterback in the league?
Yeah, I don't think there's been any kind of conversations where it came up where he would be a number 1 or a number 2.
So, like I said, I was just really surprised by the Taylor Mays signing. I'm just like, that's one of those you just look and go, why? Like, honestly, I'd be surprised, depending on who we draft, if he even makes the roster. Maybe they just signed him because he's suspended for a couple games and he's insurance just in case we go through a rash of injuries, early in the year. And now here comes Taylor Mays fresh off the bench and he can give us a little something. I can see it maybe from that angle, but man, that's just shocking to me because I just don't really know what he can bring to the table at this point.
He brings nothing.
I guess we're going to cut him a paycheck, so he better bring something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, nothing else is really going on. It's going to be quiet, right? It's going to be a couple of signings here, a couple of signings there.
Yeah, but what you see or what's happening right now is you just see teams kind of starting to slowly play the chess pieces and getting ready for the draft. So we're just, just slowly winding down, to the draft. And, then after that, I think you'll see some of the other veterans sign up and then it's time for a new season. I can't wait, to be honest with you. Like, it's going to be a good season.
Enough time has passed where it's like, okay, now we're ready. Let's get this thing going.
Yeah, I'm past the playoff game at this point. Probably have been for a little bit. To be honest, the podcast helps because now you start looking towards the future instead of just sitting there stewing about a playoff game. Yeah, so it helps. Like, the podcast helps us move forward, if you will, and to start looking forward. Because I can't wait to really delve into the new season and to discuss, I really liked the caller segment last week to do more calls with some of our listeners, and especially as we get closer to the opening of training camp, because that's when you're really going to start seeing the meat of the meat on the bone as far as what we have to deal with the season coming up.
I'll tell you one thing I saw that's going to be cool. Well, I think it's going to be fun. You're not going to care, but it lends itself to the situation. But with the Rams going to L.A., the Hard Knocks is going to be the L.A. one, the Rams one this year. That's going to be fun.
No, actually, I care about that. I think it's an interesting choice. I think it's a good choice. Yeah, I think it's going to be, number one, I always thought, this time last year, everybody's going, is it going to be the Chargers? Is it going to be the Raiders? Is it going to be the St. Louis Rams? That moves to L.A. And I actually thought it was going to be the Raiders more than anyone that would move to L.A., but I really wanted the Rams to come back to L.A. I'm old enough to remember when the Rams were in L.A. and watching Eric Dickerson with the white, blue, and gold, uniforms, running in the California sun. And to me, the Rams are L.A. Like, that's where they belonged in the first place, and they should have just never left. And so I think it's interesting that the Rams are coming to L.A. Not only that, but living so close to L.A., anytime the Bengals come out to play them, every 4 years or whatever, it's going to be nice. It's going to be nice to see the boys close to home and to look at it from, to see them up close and not have to travel so far like I do now. So I think it's interesting. I think the Hard Knocks angle, I think it's the only choice, really. How can you, if you're Hard Knocks, how can you not be following the L.A. Rams? The only way the L.A. Rams get any more interesting is if they sign Manziel or something. I'd say this, they do need a sexy quarterback pick, because if they did, then the Hard Knocks would even be, twice as good. But to see them have to move, to see the players and how they react to moving to a whole new environment, I know they're going to be practicing in Oxnard, where the Cowboys traditionally practice a couple weeks a year. Do the Cowboys get kicked out, or do they do a joint practice? And if that's the case, that'll make Hard Knocks even more interesting, if you will. And, so I thought that was a good choice. I was happy they picked the Rams. I'm curious to see how they adjust and to see if the fans welcome them with open arms. That's going to be the interesting point. How does the community really take to the Rams now that they're gone for a while and now they're coming back? And does the stadium sell out? Because that's the big gamble, with the NFL. Not that they can do much worse than they were doing in St. Louis, but they're really banking on a new stadium and a new team and to generate a lot of revenue. And so the whole LA Ram thing is very interesting. And then now you have the Chargers in San Diego who kind of got screwed in the whole process. And now their only play is to really negotiate with the city and get a new stadium done, which they should, because to be honest with you, the Charger Stadium, which me and you have attended there, that stadium isn't fit for a high school team. It's trash. I mean, there are actually stadiums in Cincinnati for high school teams I would much rather spend my money and walk into than go back to the San Diego, football stadium, if that's what you want to call that place. It's a mausoleum, dude. That thing blows. It's real bad. Which is a shame. I was discussing this with somebody else today, that the city of San Diego did such a great job building the new baseball park for the Padres. It's a gorgeous park. I mean, probably one of the nicest experiences I've had at a baseball park when I went to see the Reds play there a couple of years ago. But the football stadium is Jesus. I mean, it is horrible. I just honestly, I can't see why an NFL team in 2016 has to play in a stadium that is just really that trashed. I mean, it's really bad. As the new season of Archer comes close, we can kind of throw an ode to Archer. But seriously, it's pretty bad.
To switch gears a little bit, did you also see, and this is something that I don't really care about, I'm surprised that they're trying to hype this up, but Amazon Prime is going to be doing a series, kind of like a Hard Knocks, but it's like reliving the past year, and they're doing their first one on the Arizona Cardinals.
I didn't see that, and to be honest with you, I don't think anybody's going to care.
Yeah, I just feel like you don't want to live in the past when it comes to like football like that. Like Hard Knocks is cool because it's like training camp and it's like week to week and it's like you're already ready for some football. You're like thirsting for it, so you're ready to go, and it's all current. But I don't need to see what happened last year. I was already there.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of how I felt about it right when you just told me about it. I'm like, well, I mean, even if it was the Bengals from last year, I'd be like, I don't want to watch that. Like,
no, you would watch it.
I wouldn't. Honestly, I would not. I mean, unless there was really nothing else to do that day. And even then, I'd probably switch back and forth from a movie. Because the bottom line is, like you just said, we lived through it already. Like, we already know what happens. There's no suspense. There's nothing to it, really. I mean, I maybe they thought it was a good idea, Amazon, but this is the first time I'm hearing about it, but this gets the official Pete 2 thumbs down.
Yeah, the season is called All or Nothing, which is, it's funny since they didn't even make it to the Super Bowl. But
here's the worst part. You call it All or Nothing, and you already know what the answer is. It's nothing. They didn't win the Super Bowl. That's such a stupid. Honestly, that's such a dumb concept. I mean, you're going to get like 20,000 Arizona fans to watch that show, and then it's going to go defunct.
So anyway, just thought I'd bring that up. But yeah, I figured you would feel about it the same way I do. That it's like, why?
That's like a really bad idea. Yeah, that's kind of shockingly bad. And if you're going to pick a team from last year, why in the hell would you pick the Cardinals? The Cardinals aren't even a team that anybody's interested in the modern moment.
Well, but if you look back when they actually were filming it, the Cardinals were definitely Super Bowl hopefuls at before last year started, especially the way that the year before that.
Yeah, of course they were, but so was the Ravens, and so was the Bengals, and so was everybody else. Like, it's like all or nothing. Like, you can't just call it like, the 2015 Arizona Cardinals season in review or something like that, where it'd be interesting if maybe.
Well, it's not about the Arizona Cardinals every year. It's just the first series that they do. The first season is the Arizona Cardinals. Next season will be somebody else, just like, Hard Knocks.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. But at the same time, it's like, shit, dude, even Arizona Cardinal fans don't care about the Cardinals. Like, why the fuck with the whole nation? That's going to be your concept for a show. And you're launching the show. You couldn't have picked a worse team besides maybe the Jaguars. as to, it's basically, it shouldn't be called All or Nothing. It should be called Who the Fuck Cares? It's like, even the Cardinals won't watch it. Like, I mean, that's the only way it can become an interesting concept is, number one, you didn't start with the Cardinals. You started with a team people actually care about. So that's number one. And number two, like if you show scenes from last year, maybe training camp, and then you go into the first week and things like that, and then you have somebody commentating it from a modern point of view, from a today's point of view, like, well, looking back on it, blah blah blah, like. But even then, like the Cardinals, who gives a shit?
Well, that's the thought.
Honestly, if you're going to do that concept, I'd rather have seen the Texans season. Can you imagine the locker room the first 3 weeks when they switched quarterbacks like 5 times? Like there would have been some interesting quotes and stuff coming from that, And then it would be interesting if it was the Texans, because you see all the turmoil they went through last year at the quarterback position, and then now this year they kind of stabilized with Brock Osweiler. So at that point, it would be interesting to look back. But the Cardinals this year aren't going to be much different than they were last year. And there wasn't really a lot of controversy or anything. I mean, they were a solid club, and then they got clubbed in the playoffs. So there's really nothing interesting there. I think that's a really poor concept for a show. But what do I know? I never thought RG3 would sign with the Browns.
So we'll go with the 60% of the time we're right every time bit.
Yeah, 60% of the time it works every time. But I think the RG3 part obviously goes into the 40% category. That's more sad than anything. That you told me about the Cardinals thing. That makes me feel bad for him.
I didn't know it was going to fire you up so much.
Well, I mean, it's just a piss poor concept for a show.
And yeah, were there better teams to choose from? Sure. And is it going to be that interesting since you already know what happens? Probably not. But at the same time, you have to look at it, and from a behind the scenes kind of point of view. They're going to be showing like inside the war room from the draft and like all the behind the scenes kind of stuff. So just to see how a franchise works.
And that would even be interesting if they drafted somebody interesting, but they didn't. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, wow, the Cardinals alone just blows that concept out of the water. It's like they really started, like, we got 32 NFL teams, or, let's start with the most piss poor concept we can go with. Let's go with the Cardinals.
Maybe they win in alphabetical order. Is Arizona first?
Yeah, right? Alphabetical order. The next year, I guess that means they're going to do what, Baltimore Ravens? And the real question is, at the NFL Films is such a respected, so it does Amazon, can they cover the NFL like NFL Films does? Do they get the access to NFL Films does? Do they hit the really great angles like NFL Films does? I don't know. You know what I mean? But they really started out with a poor concept, though.
Yeah, no, it's a collaboration. It's by NFL Films. It's just going to be on Amazon.
Oh, but NFL Films did it?
Yeah, they're doing it.
Oh, well, then that saves it a little bit. But even then, all it really is a season in review if NFL Films did it. I mean, you already know how they're going to approach it.
Right. You already know they're going to have your boy as the voiceover, Lib Schreider or whatever his name is.
Sable or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll call him. What was his name in Wolverine? We'll call him Sabretooth.
Yeah. Right. But like I said, it's nothing more than a season in review. And at that point, if you're going to do that, then you might as well release every team. You know what I mean? Might as well just do one on every team, because they do a year review for every team anyway. So why not just go with the whole gambit? Why just the Cardinals? I don't know. That gets their Pete really, really enthusiastic 2 thumbs down. And in fact, I wouldn't even really like to put thumbs on it. I'd like Pete all 10 fingers down. It's not even just 2 thumbs.
All right, well, let's end it on that note. As always, follow us, hit us up on Twitter. Till next time.